Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 1 running back starter sets for the 2019 fantasy football season. Yes, the season is just around the corner. Thursday night is just upon us, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about my top 36 running back rankings for the week. Now, before we get into that, let me remind all of you, for those of you who are new to the channel, please click that subscribe button, join the community, and click that bell notification button. But for those of you who have already subscribed, we have just recently, just this past weekend, surpassed the 7,000 subscriber mark. It's incredible. It's surreal. I want to thank all of you for the continued support. I can't thank you guys enough, so thank you. Moving on, let me also mention that my Patreon has been launched just about a month ago. That is the place to get all of your 2019 fantasy football questions answered. Yes, I won't be answering many questions this season, especially in the YouTube comment section. So this is the place to go. The link is down in the description. Go check it out. That's all I ask. Just check it out. Thank you again. All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going? We're talking about Week 1 rankings. Man, it has been it's been a slug right now. Okay, let's be honest. Okay. For those of you who are new to the channel, this is going to be a weekly thing. For those of you who have been around for quite some time, maybe a year now, you know this is a weekly staple of this channel. The channel is going to go as such. Mondays, just for scheduling purposes. Waiver wire Mondays. Running back rankings Tuesday, starter sets. Wide receiver Wednesdays. Quarterbacks Thursdays. Quarterbacks and tight ends on Thursdays. Hidden gems Fridays. Saturdays will probably be a live stream and or any other content that I can come up with of sort. And then Sundays, as we all know, it's the Monday or the Sunday morning live streams before the game. So again, and then for those of you who are Patreon, there's other content extra, and we won't go into that. But for those of you who are interested, go check that out. Anyway, couple announcements I kind of want to make. As we all know, for those of you who are, been around the channel for quite some time, you'll already know that there's timestamps below. So if you're looking for a specific player, go down to the to the description of the video, go to the timestamps, and if you're looking to just hear my thoughts on a specific player, click on and watch that. And that's pretty much it, just to kind of save you some time so you don't have to click through, do you that favor. On top of that, I will talk about matchups. Matchups are extremely important. I know many of you want to talk about that. So before we even begin, let me just show this to you guys so that we're all on the same page. This was the amount of points that opposing defenses gave up to the running back position in half-point PPR scoring formats last season, at the end of the last season, at Week 17. So obviously defenses have changed this offseason. We just recently saw Jadeveon Clowney get traded to the Seattle Seahawks. There are many differences that are going to be apparent as the first week of the fantasy football season passes us. Now, obviously, a lot of this information can't be taken to heart, and you can't 100% certainly say, hey, these are the defensive rankings, but I know many of you were going to ask for this, so here they are, just so that you know, at the end of last season, this is how much defenses were giving up to opposing running backs on a weekly basis on average, okay? Now, let's go back and let's talk about this. We're going to have 3 different pages here. We're going to have the RB1s, the RB2s, and the RB3s. Now, it's plain and simple. Anybody who is on this first page from here on out is a must start on a weekly basis. These are the top 12 at the running back position, in my opinion, going into Week 1. And the fact of the matter is, these are players that you should be able to start with a lot of confidence and forget about them. You should not have to worry about these players. The following 12 players, I will give you my thoughts on every single one of them. But I just want to preface that these guys, in my opinion, again, this is very important. This is my opinion. None of this is factual, and we won't know until the end of the first week whether it pans out as such. But these are my opinions, the research that I've put together. This is how I believe Week 1 is going to pan out. So, without further ado, that entire intro, let's talk about some players, shall we? We haven't done this in a while. I might be a little rusty, but this is going to be fun. All right, so again, I don't want to slog, and I don't want to talk about a specific player for 25 minutes straight, but you might be wondering, why the heck is Ezekiel Elliott at number 1? Now, you'll see those 2 asterisk signs next to Ezekiel Elliott. And the fact of the matter is that earlier today, the reports have been coming out that Ezekiel Elliott got on a plane from Cabo and is flying and has landed in Dallas, Texas. What exactly does that mean? Now, the other report came out that said that Ezekiel Elliott is going to be offered a 6-year, $90 million contract that is going to surpass Todd Gurley's contract, making Ezekiel Elliott the highest paid running back in the National Football League, which is exactly what he wants and exactly what is going to get him in the Dallas Cowboys building and get him playing this coming Sunday. So, just so we all are on the same page, if Ezekiel Elliott signs that contract a little bit later today, because I'm recording this earlier in the day, if he ends up signing that contract, he is my number one running back on the week against the New York Giants defense that is not great. So, just to put that in perspective. Now, above me, you'll see there's a couple asterisks there that have to do with rankings are subject to change, okay? The fact of the matter is, yes, this video is being recorded on September 3rd, 2019 on a Tuesday. By Thursday, by Sunday, people can get injured, information could come out, and these rankings are always subject to change, just so everyone is aware, okay? Now that we've got that settled. Also, when it comes to Ezekiel Elliott, if Ezekiel Elliott does not sign or does not play week 1 and they cannot settle it before Sunday and he's not available to play, Tony Pollard would probably be in my teens, probably late teens, probably number 18 in my rankings, just to give you a little bit of perspective. So that has to do with the number one guy, Ezekiel Elliott. If he signs, he's my number one of the week. All right, let's talk about number 2. Let's talk about Saquon Barkley. Plain and simple, yes, he plays against the Dallas Cowboys defense. He has struggled in the past. Last season, in the 2 games, he surpassed 100 yards both times. In fact, in the first time he's ever played against the Dallas Cowboys last year, he had like 14 targets, like 13 receptions, some insane number. I believe Saquon Barkley is a guy that has to start, and we all know that, so why even talk about him anymore? He's going to be great this week. Moving on, Christian McCaffrey. The number one thing that the Los Angeles Rams struggle in, and I've been pointing this out for the last year and a half now, is that they cannot cover backs out of the backfield. Their linebackers are not talented enough to cover backs. Alvin Kamara murked them in the playoffs last year and even during the regular season, and they've struggled with this, and they continue to struggle with this. And I think Christian McCaffrey in week 1 with a healthy Cam Newton, I understand Cam Newton's ankle is a little busted, but that doesn't stop him from throwing a quick dump off pass to McCaffrey. So he's my number 3 this week. Moving on to Alvin Kamara, speak of the devil. Playing against the Houston Texans this week. I mean, here's the thing. We know these guys are the top 3 running backs in the draft rankings. These are the guys that came off the board 1, 2, 3 in whatever order it may have been, because they are reliable and they are consistent. No matter who these guys play against, the 3 that I mentioned, they have to be started, plain and simple. So Alvin Kamara, yes, you play against the Houston Texans defense, who have been stout against the run in the past, but that does not matter. This guy is too versatile in the passing game and on the ground. He's going to be a great start. He's my number 4 running back on the week. Moving on to number 5. This one is an exciting one, right? Bringing Leonard Fournette to the number 5 spot, playing against the Kansas City Chiefs this coming week. The Kansas City Chiefs struggled against the run last year. Now, I understand. They've made some adjustments. They've made some additions on the defensive side of the ball to help this team balance out. Yes, Patrick Mahomes can score 3 points a game as a team, but let's be honest, if your defense cannot hold the opposing offense, it makes your life just a little bit more difficult as a coach. So Andy Reid, he adjusted. The way that I see it, I think Leonard Fournette is this entire offense, whether it's in the passing game or on the ground. And I think he's going to be able to feast against this defense. I don't think they've done enough this offseason. And that's why he's my number 5. I like Leonard Fournette a lot this week. Leonard Fournette is all about staying healthy. And I think as long as he can do that, he can stay sustainably healthy to a point where he doesn't miss more than 2 games this season. Because I'll give him 2 games. That's fine. You can have a bye week in 2 games. But if you can produce 14 weeks for me, that's perfectly fine. All right. Moving on, let's see here. Number 6, we got Dalvin Cook playing against the Atlanta Falcons, another team last year that struggled against the run. Yes, they get Deion Jones back, the middle linebacker. They've got a couple secondary. Was it Keanu Neal coming back? Grady Jarrett. They have what? Vic Beasley. They've got their fair share of talent. We know that the Atlanta Falcons defense is not going to be as bad as it was last year. They were atrocious. There's a reason why the Falcons had to throw the ball offensively nearly 65% of the time, because their defense could not sustain. That being said, I think Dalvin Cook this coming week against the Falcons at home in a stadium is going to have a pretty good week, whether it's on the ground in the passing game. I'm really excited about the prospect of a healthy Dalvin Cook being able to establish himself. Him and Leonard Fournette, these are the comeback guys. These are the guys that need to prove to fantasy owners why they were drafted so high, and why last year was just a fluke. So I think Dalvin Cook as my number 6 against the Falcons defense is going to be a great matchup play right there. Moving on, let's talk about number 7, Chris Carson, playing against the Bengals. It's an easy, it's just, there's no explaining it. Chris Carson is going to run the ball 20 plus times, and he is going to destroy the Bengals defense. The Bengals defense, one of the worst in the NFL. Again, I'm talking about matchups, but a lot of it has to do with that at this moment in time. We know that he's going to get the volume. Rashaad Penny is there. Rashaad Penny can get all the work in the passing game he wants, but we know Chris Carson is going to get 20 touches on the ground. He is going to at least have some involvement in the passing game. He is the goal line back of this team, and to be honest, I think the way that the Seattle Seahawks look right now, they're almost, I mean, they're for sure playoff contenders, but they're a couple moves or pieces or breakout players away, N'Keal Harry, wink, wink, from being that team that can maybe, contend for that NFC, title. But either way, I think Chris Carson this week behind that bruising offensive line is going to be great against the Bengals. He's my number 7 running back. Moving on to number 8, James Conner. Now, if you cannot read this cursive, you got to go back to the 3rd grade, plain and simple, okay? Because this is as clean as it's going to get. I'm telling you, I didn't say anything about this graphics, but guys, it's beautiful, isn't it? I agree. Comment down below. How do you think this looks? It looks great. Look at the thumbnail. Look at this stuff. We're moving on. James Conner. Play against the New England Patriots. Conner last season did not play against the Patriots, but the Steelers did. And Jalen Samuels, the backup running back for the Steelers, had over 100 rushing yards on 17 carries last season. So I think it was almost 142 yards on the ground. Let's be honest, James Conner behind one of the best offensive lines, a guy that I think, as my bold prediction, was the fantasy MVP of the season. Sure, the New England defense, they're tough. They're not going to let you just run over every single time. But I think Chris Carson's a little too much, whether it's in the passing game or on the ground. The guy's going to be Grace rate. Moving on to number 9, Todd Gurley. Here's the thing. All of us don't know whether Todd Gurley is going to be the guy that gets 10 touches a game or 25 touches a game. We don't know. We've assumed that because of his injury from last season's playoffs, that because of the information that's come out about his arthritis, that he's going to be limited. The way that I see it is that you cannot leave Todd Gurley on the bench. And in fact, I don't care if they play against the Panthers defense. He's the goal line back. If he gets 13 touches, he's going to be a viable running back because he is so damn talented. And then as long as he gets a little trickle or a little sprinkle of some passing targets, the guy is going to be fantastic. He's my number 9 this week. Moving on to number 10, David Johnson playing against the Lions. Here's the thing about David Johnson. He's going to have to be the safety blanket of Kyler Murray. The entire season, Kyler Murray is going to be blitzed, and they're going to send heat after him all the time. Matt Patricia, the head coach of the Detroit Lions, he's a defensive-minded head coach, And the fact of the matter is he's going to get after Kyler Murray, and David Johnson has to be aware, be able to pick up coverage or pass block responsibilities, but then also be a receiving threat, which in my opinion, that's what one of his best attributes are. Besides being a runner, he is a fantastic wide receiver, and especially in a half-point PPR scoring format, I cannot leave David Johnson out of the top 10 this coming week. Number 11 and number 12, Nick Chubb sitting at my 11th spot. The reason why, the Tennessee Titans, for those of you who have been around the channel for quite some time, I absolutely will target their secondary on a weekly basis. Who plays them in week 1? Baker Mayfield and the boys from LSU, good old Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. They're going to feast this week. Maybe even Rashad Higgins. You never know. Maybe a DFS play right there, okay? All I know is that right now, Nick Chubb, sure, is going to get his 18-plus carries on the ground, but they are very good against the run. The Tennessee Titans do not want to give up anything against the run, but their secondary, whether it's Adoree Jackson or Malcolm Butler, they have struggled in the past against wide receivers that have any sort of talent. Every week, if you find T.Y. Hilton playing against the Tennessee Titans, you start him up because he's going to beat them over the top. I feel like, as of right now, sure, Nick Chubb is a great running back, but the pass game is going to be keyed in on very heavily. If Nick Chubb at the number 11 spot, that's an automatic start. But just we're splitting hairs at this point to just kind of give you an idea that he has to find the end zone many times in order to get any higher than the 11 spot, in my opinion. Because the passing game, we've yet to see him get a 7-target, 6-reception kind of game. That's what we're looking for in week 1. Hopefully he can find that. The last guy in my top 12 that I wanted to mention, Le'Veon Bell for the New York Jets, playing against the Buffalo Bills defense that, to be honest, Buffalo Bills defense last season was pretty good. They struggled heavily against the run, but have always been good against opposing quarterbacks. So if they can force Sam Darnold to struggle, then what's going to happen? He's going to look for Le'Veon Bell out of the backfield. He's going to look for him as a receiving target. He's going to look for him as a safety blanket for checkdowns, similar to how Cam Newton treats Christian McCaffrey. Yes, he might be the number 1 receiver, but a lot of it is not his first read. He is honestly looking and dumping it off. So I think Le'Veon Bell into a better matchup this week. Perhaps if Sam Darnold forces himself into a tricky situation, we'll look for Le'Veon Bell for the leadership and a safety blanket to help him out and get him out of that situation. Anyway, these are the top 12 running backs of this week. Let's move on to my 13 through 24. Now, we're going to try to pick up the pace. But here's the thing about this. If you own any of these guys, they should be starting this week. If, in fact, you own 3 of the top 20, if you own 5 of the top 24 running backs, congratulations. And obviously, congratulations are in order because you've done a hell of a job in your draft. So that's fantastic. On top of it, there's no going wrong, but there are a couple players here and there that I feel more comfortable with going into this week. So let's talk about number 13, Kerryon Johnson, playing against the Cardinals, the team that gave up the most points against the run last season. A team that, yes, they have made some additions defensively, but they still look like a joke against the run. Plain and simple, I 100% believe that if Kerryon Johnson is given the entire reign in his backfield, we're assuming that C.J. Anderson is going to contribute here and there. If he ends up having a LeGarrette Blount role with 7 to 8, rushing attempts per game, it's going to hurt Kerryon Johnson. But I can 100% see the potential of Kerryon Johnson completely dominating this backfield, having all the touches, all the carries, all the targets, and ending up being a top 12 running back by the end of the week. He's on that fringe because we don't know how much exactly they want to use C.J. Anderson, but it looks good for this week 1 against the Cardinals. Moving on to Joe Mixon. Here's the thing about Mixon. This is probably one of his tougher matchups, playing against the Seahawks defense. Yes, I understand his offensive line struggles. Guys, I'm telling you, the offensive line struggles for Joe Mixon, they're not that big of a deal. They may seem pretty bad that he's missing 3 out of his 5. I watched preseason. I watched the first team against first team defenses, and I'm telling you, this offensive line did not struggle as much as many people think. Now, there is a great opportunity for them to be exposed this coming weekend, especially when Clowney's getting after Andy Dalton. That is a for sure risk. Andy Dalton's going to have to get the ball out of his hands as soon as possible, whether that's to Tyler Boyd or whether that's to Joe Mixon. One of the two are going to be great this week, probably both, because they're both consistent players. I think Joe Mixon is going to find himself some success. He's my number 14. Number 15, Mark Ingram. Here we go. We're bringing out another spicy one, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Ingram, yes. He plays against the Dolphins. The Dolphins defense, which you're going to realize for the entirety of the season, is going to be the easiest matchup for every offense probably known to man. Here's the thing. The Dolphins are in a rebuilding process. They traded away Laramie Tunsil and Kenny Stills. Then they also have, Ryan Fitzpatrick at the quarterback position. They traded away Kiko Alonso. They're moving pieces. They have acquired 3 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks for the next, 2 years? This team is in the rebuilding process. Trust the process, right? That's what they say. That's what, Joel Embiid, right? Trust the process. That's what they want you to believe. But as of right now, I think the Baltimore Ravens, they're going to go down to Miami and they're going to smack the defense of the Dolphins. I think right now that team is in shambles. Whether it's having an identity, they don't really have one. They're trying to look for one. They're trying to rebuild to create an identity for themselves, and I don't think they have one right now. So Mark Ingram being the starting running back of the Ravens offense, who loves to run the ball against the Miami Dolphins defense, who's just handing away defensive players. Sure, they have Xavier Howard still, but what is Xavier Howard going to do in run support? Somebody explain me that. and we'll get an answer. Sure, you got, Minkah Fitzpatrick will come down as a safety and try to pop somebody. Sure, but eventually you're going to get caught in the wrong area, and Marshall Yonda is going to put you on your back. Moving on. Mark Ingram is my number 15. Damien Williams. Sure, LaShawn McCoy has signed, but that does not force Damien Williams out of the starting running back position. I believe there is going to be a 50 to 30 to 20 kind of split in this backfield between Damien Williams, McCoy, and Darwin Thompson. As of right now, there has been information from Andy Reid coming out saying, hey, this is going to be a split starting backfield. We're going to have McCoy and Damien Williams both be co-starters. It's up to Damien Williams, especially in the passing game this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, to step up and make some plays, and I think he's going to be able to do so. He's my number 16 running back, a guy that is more comfortable with the offense. I understand it's still a similar scheme to what LaShawn McCoy played with Andy Reid in the past in Philadelphia, but I really think Damien Williams is my number 16 back. Seems like a pretty reliable spot for him as of right now. Moving on to 17, Josh Jacobs, the rookie running back out of Alabama, playing against the Denver Broncos. The Raiders are going to be down a couple pieces, maybe AB plays. I'm hoping he does. If he doesn't play, we're going to have some trouble, but we'll see how that ends up. I think he's going to play. He'll be fine. But offensive line, you won't have Richie Incognito, who's probably one of your better offensive linemen of the group. But I think plain and simple, against the Denver defense, it is a pretty, it's a tough slate. That front seven, they've improved. As a defense, they've always been consistent. So can Josh Jacobs take the next step forward and be exactly what we want him to be, that running back that potentially could vie for that top 12 spot? I think he's going to have a great opportunity this week. As long as he gets the receiving targets that Jalen Richard typically got, I think he has let's be honest. The Raiders, sure, they might not look like a sexy team in terms of fantasy value, but Josh Jacobs is truly their number one fantasy prospect that, in my opinion, at the current value that he was coming off draft boards, can really produce for teams. He's my number 17. Moving on to 18, Devonta Freeman. You play against the Vikings. That's tough. But the thing about Devonta Freeman is he's never been more healthy in his career, according to the doctors of the organization, himself, and the coaches and players that surround him. He has never looked as good as he does this season. You're going to start off with a pretty difficult matchup away from home at Minnesota. Let me go ahead and confirm. Is that at Minnesota? Otherwise, I'm just pushing gas. And where in the heck is that? Yeah, they're at Minnesota. Thank you very much, Andrew. Only took you 3.5 seconds. And the thing is, to be honest, this offense is going to 100%, as we all know, rely on the passing game. They do have a great defense there. Harrison Smith, you have Anthony Barr running around with his head cut off. You have one of the other, what's his name, brothers? Oh, my God. The UCLA kid. Okay, forget it. I'm not naming defensive players. I'm an offensive guy. We're moving on. The whole thing is Devonta Freeman, he does not have as good of a matchup. We're really going to have to see exactly what kind of offense Dirk Cutter is going to put together here. Because if Devonta Freeman isn't given the ample amount of touches, if he isn't given 14 plus a single week, we're going to see a little bit of a different offense. I understand they want to keep Devonta Freeman healthy. We'll see what kind of split him and Ito Smith have. But as of right now, into a little bit more difficult matchup in an offense that wants to heavily throw the ball, Devonta Freeman will sit in my number 18 spot. It's still another guy that must be started if he's on your roster. Tevin Coleman, speaking of another running back that played for the Falcons last year, Tevin Coleman, playing for the San Francisco 49ers, right now is the RB1 of that team. Sure, Matt Breida is there, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. But against Tampa Bay, it's going to be a great matchup. Tevin Coleman can do just about anything. Run it outside of the tackle, off tackle, in between the tackles, in the passing game. He is a very versatile running back, and no other team last season in the NFL used more two-back sets than the 49ers. So Matt Breida and Tevin Coleman, both of them, separately, whether they even have Kyle Juszczyk in that backfield. We know Jerick McKinnon is on the IR right now. Both of them are going to be viable this week, especially in a good matchup against Tampa Bay's defense, who lost a lot of pieces this offseason. So Tevin Coleman's my number 19. Moving on to 20, Marlon Mack. Here's the thing. We all know Andrew Luck's missing. Is there a possibility that Marlon Mack can consistently still be of the value of where we drafted him? Sure, he's going to struggle throughout the season because of the fact that defenses, if Jacoby Brissett cannot produce, are going to stack the box, and they're going to make his life a living hell. But their offensive line, their weapons within their offense, it is going to alleviate some pressure. If Jacoby Brissett can get into a rhythm, I think Marlon Mack can be just as good as he was with Andrew Luck, as long as they get the red zone opportunities and he can find himself in the end zone again. Like I've mentioned in the past, the guy scored 10 touchdowns in 12 games last year. If we can see that again, he can find some consistency and be an RB2 this coming week. Moving on to number 21, the starting running back of the Los Angeles Chargers, we have Austin Ekeler. Gordon's not playing. Eckler's probably going to have 60 to 65% of the offensive snaps, and then he'll split with Justin Jackson, who we'll talk about in a bit. But Austin Ekeler, a great receiving back, a guy that is going to see a lot of targets. Like I've mentioned in the past before, guys, Melvin Gordon was the number 2 wide receiver of this team last season prior to his injury. He has been a reliable receiving threat for this organization, and Austin Ekeler is just as capable in the passing game, a guy that, truth be told, a lot of defenses don't stack the box against him. So there's going to be some running lanes for Austin Ekeler, and he's going to have some pretty good opportunity against the Indianapolis Colts. Marlon Mack and Austin Ekeler going head-to-head at my 20 and 21 spot. Moving on. Going to number 22, Phillip Lindsay, playing against the Raiders this coming week. Phillip Lindsay's fantasy production for the entirety of the season is going to rely on whether or not he can run Royce Freeman under the table. And, he did it last season as an undrafted free agent rookie against all the odds. But this coming season, it's really going to be the test. Last season, he only touched the ball 40-some-odd% of the time in terms of in terms of offensive snaps. Is this Joe Flacco-led offense that is going to run the ball heavily be a split 50-50 between Lindsay and Freeman? Who is going to make that breakout run and have the hot hand? I think Phillip Lindsay has the advantage as of right now. That's why he sits on my number 22 spot, but we will talk about Royce Freeman in the coming minutes. Moving on to number 23, Sony Michel. Here's the thing about Michel. If he doesn't find the end zone, the guy is not as reliable. We've seen him torch teams in the playoffs. He destroyed the Chargers, he destroyed the Chiefs, he destroyed the Rams. Plain and simple. He is a consistent running back. If you guys had my 2019 fantasy football draft kit, you would see the stats. You would see how much the Patriots want to run the ball. But the question at the moment is, when you play against the Pittsburgh Steelers and you have so much talent on this offense, whether it's White, Edelman, Gordon, Damian Harris, Rex Burkhead, Michel, who is going to touch the ball? Plain and simple. If Michel gets vultured by the fullback once again this season in a game like this, it is going to hurt Sony Michel, especially the fact that he doesn't get a lot of usage in the passing game, lowers his value accordingly. He's my number 23 back, but still a good start in week 1. My last guy in my top 24, a guy that, man, I've been talking about him all offseason. I love Aaron Jones, but this is his toughest matchup. When you play against the Chicago Bears, plain and simple, you might want to leave your running back on the bench. Many of you do not have an option to leave Aaron Jones on your bench, so you got to play him. And you got to hope. And you got to watch that Thursday night football game and pray to whatever God you believe in that Aaron Jones can bust out a run, have a catch that breaks for a couple, for perhaps a touchdown on the goal line, or for a good enough amount of yards to where he can put up a viable fantasy week against one of the toughest, if not the toughest defense against the run, against the pass, everything. The Chicago Bears are getting after it. Let's move on. Let's talk about my last 12 prospects, my 25 to 36 rankings, my RB3s this coming week. Speaking of that Bears and Packers game, we have David Montgomery, a guy that, here's the thing. The Thursday night games are typically, especially that start the season, they're either shootouts or they're fiestas, meaning fiesta is just a mess. Like, I don't know, it's a video game term. Don't worry about it. David Montgomery should be the supposed RB1 of this team. We're going to see just how many touches a game he is going to get and how many targets a game he's going to get comparatively to Tarik Cohen and Mike Davis. I think David Montgomery right now should be the number 1. He has shown enough this offseason and in college to prove to the Bears, hey, I'm this RB1. I'm going to run people over, and I'm going to fill in Jordan Howard's spot just perfectly fine. So if he can see his 15 touches, if he can find the end zone, he's much higher than the number 25 spot. But the fact of the matter is, Tarik Cohen is still in that backfield. They still have Mike Davis, and Trubisky's got legs. And you never know when the guy's going to boot out for a touchdown or find the tight end. So moving on to my number 26, Derrick Henry. Here's the thing. I may be roasting Derrick Henry every single week. I don't even want him in my 26. But I'm going to put him here because I hope Derrick Henry can find a way to somehow touch the ball 18 plus times and find the end zone. Because if he can, he's going to be a viable fantasy prospect. The toughest part about Derrick Henry's slate this week, plain and simple, is you play against the Cleveland Browns at Cleveland. And Taylor Lewan, the all-pro left tackle of the Tennessee Titans, is suspended for the first 4 games of the season. So what exactly does that mean? The Tennessee Titans, without their starting left tackle, have to take on Myles Garrett, Olivier Vernon, and Sheldon Richardson, and then some other defensive tackle that's pretty good. Honestly, the name eludes me. You have to take on a front 4 that is probably one of the best in the NFL, if not the best, as of right now. Okay? And you have to do that without your starting left tackle. If you go and look at how many sacks the backup left tackle for the Titans gave up when Taylor Lewan missed time last season, I'm telling you, Marcus Mariota was running for his life. And then when he wasn't running for his life and he was injured on the sideline, it was Blaine Gabbert. So, just putting it out there. Derrick Henry, I'm hoping, but it's not looking great. Moving on, 27, Tarik Cohen. Same thing. When I was talking about David Montgomery, Tarik Cohen is used very often in this offense. If, in fact, Aaron Rodgers gets ahead early, Tarik Cohen is going to be used heavily in the passing game in order to help Mitchell Trubisky as his little, dump-off target that is his little... it's a safety blanket to an extent because really, Mitchell Trubisky, in my opinion, outside of throwing Anthony Miller a touchdown in the red zone, really doesn't have any security blankets because Trey Burton is average. But Tarik Cohen, as of right now, I have a lot of confidence in him this week. I think a lot of people have been sleeping on him, but this is one of those weeks where Tarik Cohen can come out and be a nice RB3 for a team as a flex start. Moving on to number 28. Don't want to skip anybody. Done that in the past. Don't want to do that again. Rashaad Penny. Here's the thing. I have Chris Carson as my number 7 back, but Rashaad Penny is going to get just as many touches. We know that the Seattle Seahawks, the Ravens, and the New England Patriots run the ball more than any team in the National Football League, especially last season, and I think that's going to continue. If it's not broke, why fix it? Rashaad Penny was drafted in the first round of the 2018 season, and there's a reason why he is going to be given a lot of targets. No more Mike Davis. The guy is going to be given targets out of the backfield, a lot of, rushing attempts that could help alleviate a little bit of the pressure off Carson, and he's a good flex play this coming week. He's my number 28. Number 29, similar. Another flex play that is going to get touches in his respective backfield. Yes, we've seen Alvin Kamara dominate on goal lines, passing game, in the backfield. But in order to keep Alvin Kamara healthy, they've got to have that two-headed monster scheme that I've been talking about for the last 2 years. And that's with Latvius Murray getting his 10 touches a game and potentially being a very viable flex start. 29. Moving to 30, Miles Sanders. A little bit of a tricky one, but you play against the Redskins defense who really could get blasted this week by a very good offense and offensive line. Miles Sanders is supposedly going to be the starting running back, but there's always a chance that Jordan Howard yoinks a couple touches, maybe a goal line carry. Corey Clement steals a touchdown. There's always that chance. That's why we leave him at this flex spot, not any higher, until we can see what kind of opportunity he's getting in this backfield and find a little bit more confidence in starting him going into the following weeks. Moving on to 31, similar. Devin Singletary should be the supposed starter. No more LaShawn McCoy, but you still have the veteran Frank Gore. You have a somewhat veteran that's been in the league for I think 6 years, 7 years now, TJ Yeldon. To be honest, Devin Singletary should have this backfield to himself. If he doesn't, I'll be surprised. And to be honest, we're being honest here, right? Plain and simple. The fact of the matter is Devin Singletary is a talented back, but how much success will this offense find in the running game? They were not able to move the ball with LaShawn McCoy. Last year, they struggled heavily in that department, whether it was Chris Ivory or LaShawn McCoy. So as of right now, Devin Singletary, in an offense that has made some improvements, still, I'm a little hesitant on giving him the right away, but still a flex play for sure. Moving on to number 32, James White. He is the handcuff to Sony Michel. But is James White going to get enough work in the passing game, plain and simple? Now that they've brought in Damian Harris and they have Rex Burkhead in that New England Patriots offense, James White is going to have to be used as a slot receiving option or a third down receiving option that has to find the end zone in order to be anything higher than the number 32 back. There's always a possibility. And for those of you who have him as your best third available option as a flex start, it's not a bad opportunity this coming week against the Steelers. Moving on, Duke Johnson. The question is whether Duke Johnson or Carlos Hyde is going to get majority of the work at his backfield. Carlos Hyde is washed up. We know this. The guy has been from the 49ers to the Browns to the Jaguars to the Chiefs, and now he lands with the Houston Texans. He's washed up. We know this. But is Duke Johnson going to be able to get a lot of work in the passing game and then potentially find some relevancy and security in his position? I think as a flex play in a PPR, especially half PPR, like we're talking about, Duke Johnson can be played this week against a defense that has struggled against the passing game. They play against the Saints, and I like the matchup. Carlos Hyde, I mean, he could get a couple touches here and there, but I'm telling you, the New Orleans defense is very good against the run. They were fantastic last year for the entirety of the season. Against the pass, they've struggled the most. And I think that's exactly what they want to exploit, and Duke Johnson's going to help do that. So he's my 33. 34, Derrius Guice, a guy going against a very difficult matchup. Without his starting left tackle, Trent Williams, you have to play against the Eagles. And the Eagles' front seven has always been good. You have Brandon Graham and you have Fletcher Cox getting after Case Keenum. I think Derrius Guice can be a flex start this coming week. Very little passing work. Chris Thompson's going to absorb that, and Adrian Peterson is still in his backfield. Therefore, I think Derrius Guice, though he is a good top 36 start, should be, just be careful with it. Just be careful. Be responsible with your Derrius Guice, okay? Moving on, 35, Peyton Barber into a good matchup, supposedly. But really, the problem with the running backs of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is that we've seen nothing to grab onto and have confidence. Sure, you play against the 49ers, and the 49ers have struggled defensively. But unless you, Ronald Jones, when I say you, Peyton Barber, Ronald Jones, or Dare Abungawale, whatever his last name, Gumbo Shrimp, I'm going to call him Gumbo Shrimp from now on. I hope he has a breakout week. Dare Gumbo Shrimp. Just do it. Have the breakout week, be the number one of this team, or please, somebody go and trade for Melvin Gordon. Peyton Barber's my number 35. 36, Matt Breida. Like I mentioned before, same matchup. A guy that is going to be used heavily in this offense. No other offense has used two back sets more than the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan did last season. And I think Matt Breida, yes, he's dealt with injuries in the past, but once he's healthy, the guy is a breakaway running back that can be used in the passing game, on the ground. He's a great addition. And that's pretty much it. These are my top 36 backs. If I mentioned somebody, or if I did not mention somebody that you are considering starting, go down to the comment section. A lot of people are going to be down there. Otherwise, check out my Patreon. Guys, thank you for joining me for the first running back rankings of the 2019 fantasy football season. I can't wait for this to get started. This was just a little bit of a taste. So if you're new to the channel, reminders again, click that subscribe button. Go to my Patreon. Check that out. That's all I ask. Give it a gander. Click that like button. Get this video up there. I much appreciate all of you for the continued support. If we can get to 8,000 subscribers, that's even better. And thank you again, everybody. It's a wonderful Tuesday. Rankings are subject to change. Am I forgetting anything off the top of my head? Should be fun. Man, tomorrow's wide receivers. And eventually, we're going to talk a little bit about running backs more and more. But as the week progresses, maybe we have a couple live streams where we'll just specifically talk about matchups, running backs, rankings, my thought process, a little bit more, a longer exchange. But either way, thank you everybody for watching. Much appreciated. I hope you guys have a wonderful Tuesday. And until tomorrow, where we're talking about wide receivers on Wednesday, I bid you adieu. Thank you everybody for watching. See you guys.